Canada's premiers are headed to the heart of Ontario cottage country looking for an update on the high-stakes trade talks from Prime Minister Mark Carney. The First Minister's meeting comes as Carney appears to have shifted his tone, suggesting for the first time this week that a tariff-free deal with the U.S. may not be possible, and raising the question of whether Canada should be willing to accept some tariffs as part of a deal.
I think it is the reality of what things look like moving forward, but it isn't new. We've lived in a tariff-filled environment from between provinces, between nations around the world, and even at times with the U.S.
Susan Holt is the Premier of New Brunswick. Thanks for coming on. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too, JP.
What are you expecting to hear from the Prime Minister when you meet with him early next week?
Oh, well, we're looking forward to hearing an update on the negotiations with the U.S. And how those trade talks are going, because New Brunswick is very keen to see an elimination of this uncertainty. We want clarity on softwood lumber. We want clarity on seafood. We want no tariffs. And so we're very much looking forward to hearing about the progress that Prime Minister Carney has made in those discussions. And then we're keen to talk about New Brunswick's role in building this country and strengthening our economy. So we have lots to talk about the Eastern Energy Partnership, about the critical role our ports play in building the economy of our neighboring provinces in our country, and the minerals that we have that strengthen our geopolitical position with other countries on defense and on the green economy. So lots and lots to talk about.
You mentioned the elimination of uncertainty. What about the elimination of tariffs? The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister are both suggesting this week it will be tough to cut a deal with the Americans without any tariffs. Do you think Canada will have to swallow some tariffs to reach an agreement with Trump?
Well, look, the Minister and the Prime Minister know best because they're in those talks. Our goal is always the most open, free, and fair trade possible, the least amount of tariffs. The goal is no tariffs. But there have been some form of tariffs in between our two countries at different levels on different products over a lot of years. It's just that the volatility, the uncertainty, the level of some of the tariffs, we'd like as much of that gone as possible. And so I'm prepared to put my faith in our negotiators with Ambassador Hillman and Minister LeBlanc and Prime Minister Carney that they will get us the best possible deal and as close to no tariffs as possible.
The Prime Minister seemed to be preparing the country for the possibility of tariffs sticking around this week. He was saying Canada already enjoys, essentially tariff-free access to the United States, but there are those pesky sectoral tariffs, of course, the Section 232 tariffs, as they're called. Would you consider it a failed negotiation for Canada if we can't get those tariffs listed?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about what I would consider a failure of the negotiations and a success. Certainly here in New Brunswick, we want to make sure our seafood sector is walking away tariff-free, and some of that then extends to the tariffs we're facing with China. We want to see those softwood lumber tariffs dealt with once and for all, and so that one's top on our radar. The aluminum and steel tariffs that are in place are a problem for us, and so we want to see some progress there. And ideally, we want a clear path to a new trade deal between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico that we can all be confident will be honored in the years ahead.
The reason why tariffs are so important for you folks in New Brunswick is 96% of the exports in St. John are destined for the U.S. I'm sure you've heard this stat. St. John is what some consider the most tariff vulnerable city in the country. If we can't get those tariffs lifted, what would it mean for your province? What would it mean for the economy? What would it mean for the huge port there that sends so much to places all around the world? Take me inside. What would it mean for the economy if we can't get those tariffs off?
Yeah, this is certainly top of mind for the business community in St. John and a lot of the province, because while those are the headquarters of some of these industries, their operations span many communities and a lot of New Brunswickers. The good news is their products are in high demand. We're talking about petroleum products, we're talking about lumber, we're talking about the best seafood in the world, for which the demand has been increasing from Asia, from Europe, and other places. Certainly for energy products, there's an insatiable demand for those products from the US and others. And so I think the Americans might find themselves paying more for energy products over time if these tariffs don't get addressed in the way that works for everyone. But we're working really hard with the business community, with the entrepreneurs of St. John around that diversification strategy, those new markets. And let me add, since I can, the port of St. John has been growing in capacity and volume, bringing New Brunswick goods to the world. There's new cold storage that's being built wharfside at some of the only wharfside cold storage anywhere on the Eastern Seaboard, and it brings our agricultural products to the world. So the growth in the port is actually one of the silver linings in this, is that they're coming on like gangbusters at a time when that's really going to help the rest of the economy that needs those connections that the port has to the rest of the world and to the rest of the country and into the U.S. They need that more than ever. So lucky for us, the port is really gaining in strength and volume right now.
The federal Conservatives are framing Carney's actions to this point as essentially caving to U.S. President Donald Trump, right? He dropped the digital services tax. He's holding back on retaliatory tariffs, at least matching the rates that Donald Trump has set to this point on steel and aluminum. And then his latest comments that we spoke about earlier this week, saying that it might be inevitable that we have tariffs after this negotiation. Pierre Poilievre was calling it a complete and utter capitulation. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely not. I think that there's a lot that goes into these negotiations, coming up with the best deal for our country, for our exporters, for our economy. There's a lot of different pieces that are at play here, particularly with other countries. I mentioned the Chinese tariffs that are in place right now, that some of which were earned because of relationships and agreements built with the US. There's a lot of moving pieces happening with Europe and Mexico right now. And I think, I think that we have the right people in the right roles with Ambassador Hillman and Minister LeBlanc and Prime Minister Carney, and I think they are best positioned to look after Canada's best interests and get the deal that does the least harm and creates the most opportunity. And I'm going to continue to advocate for New Brunswick's interests in lumber and seafood and others. And I know that we've got a willing partner and people who are listening at the top.
You're not alone among the premiers in thinking that we have the right people on the job right now. The Prime Minister seems to have very good rapport with the premiers, even conservative-minded ones like Doug Ford, Scott Moe, Danielle Smith. They seem to have a much friendlier relationship with Carney, especially compared to his predecessor, Justin Trudeau. Why are relations so good?
Well, I think it's because Prime Minister Carney has come in open. He's listened really carefully to what the premiers have told him about what's happening on the ground in our communities and in our economies. He's been really active in sharing information, getting the group together, asking for input, keeping us up to date on what's been going on. He's demonstrated flexibility. And he's demonstrated significant insight and experience in this space. And so I think that we feel like we have a partner in Prime Minister Carney who is going to listen and who's going to respect the role that Canada's premiers play in this country and in their own provinces. And we're building a path forward together.
Susan Holt, Premier of New Brunswick, thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, JP. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.